Back when the Vincent was released, it was the fastest thing money could buy, so it was already exclusive when it was actually first released in the UK. The Rapide, which my model is, would do guaranteed to do 110 mile an hour, and then the hot rod version, the Black Shadow, that was guaranteed to do 120. So that created this mystique around Vincents. My name's Dan Talbot, and today I'm riding my 1948 Vincent H.R.D. Rapide. This is a 40-something year dream of dating back to when I was a child, going to Claremont Speedway. And back in those days, Vincents were the king of the sidecars. Tom McQuaid, Dennis Nash, they used to win everything on Vincents. So little confined circuit of Claremont Speedway, you had all these half a dozen or more Vincent motorcycles racing round and round the track. And then on the way home, we're driving back to Bunbury, and Dad and his mates would be talking about these Vincents, and that sort of planted a seed, and it's just sort of germinated from there. It just kept going and going until finally, after, here we are, I'm in middle age, and I finally got hold of one a couple of years ago. So it's probably dates back to the early 70s that I've been chasing one of these motorcycles, and now I have one. There's a limited number of Vincents. I'm not sure exactly how many. I've got a figure of around 6,000 ever manufactured. The engineering that went into them back in essentially the 30s when this motorcycle was designed, notwithstanding it's a 48 model, the engineering was, to use an old term, years ahead of its time. The cantilever suspension, for example, and the engine itself, they sort of produced this motorcycle that was nothing else around at the time that could come near it. And it cost, back in those days, it cost the same as what a small house in the UK would cost, or in London or somewhere would cost. So they created this exclusivity around them at the time, and that's just continued to flow on. And as years go by and bikes were raced and crashed and destroyed, the numbers have dwindled and they become collectible, and every now and then one pops up and you just need to be in a position to grab it when it comes up. Like Triumph at the time and Norton and a few of the others, they've been accused of sort of not keeping up with the times, I suppose, just relying on what they'd already had. And Vincent had this massive name of a motorcycle that was fast and reliable and just a great all-round machine. And I guess they just rested on their laurels for too long, and eventually the world moved on and Vincent didn't. This particular motorcycle was rebuilt by Terry Prince, who's an Englishman who's been in Australia for a couple of decades now. And he's known all around the world for producing pistons and big bore kits for Vincents, takes them out to 1200 or 1300 cc's, crankshafts and all the internals that go in the engine. So when I heard that this Terry Prince bike was on the market, I was pretty keen, and I found out that it was actually in America. Terry he'd rebuilt it and he sent it off to America to be auctioned. There were a few things about this bike that Terry had modernised it with Japanese Mikuni carbies and fully floating rear suspension and stuff, which evidently the Americans didn't take to. So it went to the Las Vegas auction, the Mercom auction I think it's called, and got passed in and sat in America for a couple of years, and then it was advertised over here. And I was third in line for this particular bike, and eventually the other two people that were in front of me fell away. And Terry said, well, if you put the deposit in my bank, it's yours. So when I did that, the bike was actually sitting on the docks in California. I hadn't laid eyes on it. I just trusted in Terry's work. And I didn't even negotiate. He told me how much he wanted and I said, okay. I went to the bank, money's gone in, and the bike was mine, and then I just had to wait for it to get back to Australia. It landed in Melbourne, and I flew to Melbourne to check it out, and then I flew up to New South Wales to drive up to Terry's place and meet him and pay the rest of the money for the bike. I get in a bit of trouble for saying this, but it is a little bit like riding, say, a cross between a Harley Davidson and a Ducati, two other very well-known V-twins. And the way that it pulls, you know, you crack the throttle and there's this sort of lug, 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 and away she goes. It's really hard to describe, but it's like this effortless chug, chug, chug. And as I say, the speed creeps up and you don't even realise you're doing it. You come out of a bend and you crack the throttle and away it goes into sound again. or going up a hill, and just anywhere really. It's really reliable. It's my go-to bike. Basically, you could call it a daily rider. Certainly, I try to get on it at least once a week, and I've got 7 other motorcycles in my shed at home, but this is the one I go to. This is my favourite, and it's the one I want to ride most. So someone told me not that long ago that if you have a Vincent, you only need one bike, and he's pretty well right. But yeah, so if I ever get to being a one motorcycle owner, it'll be the Vincent.